Alright, so I'm going to be doing a power rankings show here, but I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently than most people do power rankings. It's not even really power rankings, because I feel like a typical power rankings thing, what you do is you just say, this is the team I think is most likely to win the Super Bowl. They're at number 1. It's more of a predicting ranking, whereas for me, it's not a prediction whatsoever. Basically, all I'm going to do is, in fact, I have no say in which team goes where, kind of. You might be a little confused. Let me explain. So I created this formula of what typically results in wins. And the way I created the formula was simply just looking at how individual teams ranked in certain positions and how, likely that made them to score more points or to give up less points. And, created a formula that way, which resulted in, my predictions. If you want to, learn more about it, the video is on this channel entitled "We're All Wrong About Positional Value." So that's what I did. I used that for my preseason predictions, and now I figured it could be fun to do that for the regular season power rankings and just kind of go week by week and see how impressive teams have been. The way I did this was using Pro Football Focus's rankings on everything except kicker. Kicker, there's too much variance. I mean, Josh Lambo went 0 for 1. I can't, make him now the worst kicker in football. So I looked at how many wins I already give to the kicking position and just made that even throughout the board. So every team gets 0.42 wins just for showing up, just because there's too much variance there. But for every other position, it's where you ranked in terms of Pro Football Focus. So this is not my opinion on how impressive each position group is. It's Pro Football Focus's opinion, because I wanted sort of a definitive thing and I wanted to remove myself from the equation. So basically, I created the formula, but I have no say in who's going where. I have to set all of this up entirely, because if I don't set this up and I don't take the time to explain why this happens, you're going to think I'm an idiot for having certain teams where they are. But just keep in mind, this is not my opinion on how good these teams are going to be throughout the entire season. This is more of a basically just a guess on, or not even a guess, but just it's more of explaining how good these teams played week 1. That's a great example of, that's probably the best way to phrase it. This is how these teams have played up until this point in a small sample size. I would also say that this chart worked pretty well. Only the Cleveland Browns finished higher on the chart than the team that they lost to. Every other team that lost finished lower, which, checks out. That makes sense. And also to everyone who says I overvalue the receiving core and undervalue edge rushers, the bottom 12 teams in terms of receiving, according to Pro Football Focus, all lost, and only 3 of them ended up with more than 16 points. That was the Ravens, with Lamar Jackson doing his thing. That was the the Lions, who kind of had a weird, ending right there, and the Jaguars, who had 21 points, and that was, kind of a weird game. Lawrence threw 3 picks. So I feel good about all of this stuff. Anyways, I'm probably gonna have to put a timestamp in the video, because I did go a little long in the explanation, but I want people to understand it. So anyways, let's just get into the power rankings now. So yes, that's right. The number 1 team in football, the Broncos, I have with 16.77 wins. And this is a great example of why the small sample sizes are going to create some unusual things right off the bat. The Broncos had a good game. Do I expect Teddy Bridgewater to be a tier 1 quarterback all season? No, I don't. Do I expect their running game to be tier 1 all season? No, I don't. I think that, it was largely due to one big 90-yard run by Melvin Gordon that their running game is that high, because again, we're dealing with small sample sizes, so this stuff is going to happen. I do, however, think that there is some stuff we can take away from this. Their offensive line being tier 1, I could see that being pretty consistent. Their wide receiving core being very good, that makes sense to me that could continue. Their coverage being very good, I expect that to continue. So while the 16.77 total wins is obviously very high, and we're going to see that, and again, the smart way to look at this is to say, okay, that's interesting. Why is that the case? Instead of saying, oh, that's stupid, that doesn't make any sense, and moving on. Well, I think they'll probably lose like at least 4 wins right off the top, just with the running game and the quarterback play. If everything else around their team can, keep up, this could still be legit a 12-5 team or something like that, which is, very optimistic. Again, can Teddy even be a, tier 3 quarterback throughout this season? Maybe not. Maybe you're losing another win or two there, but still, if the supporting cast continues to play the way that they can play, this is still probably a playoff team. So that's optimistic for the Broncos. But again, there is still several ifs there. Number 2 is the Rams. And the Rams are another interesting one because I actually think it's possible that I look down the line and what feels like it's wrong here. I think you could really legitimately make the argument this is how good this team is, a 14.4 win team. For number 3, Cincinnati, again, a surprise, right? And, with the 1 game sample size, we're going to get to see some teams that had a really good week 1 that maybe won't be able to consistently be this good, kind of skyrocket in the rankings and could potentially fall. I would guess that would happen with Cincinnati, but again, how would it happen? I mean, I'm surprised their receiving core played so well. Will that continue, or is that just sort of a 1-game fluke? Same thing with their running game. Joe Mixon, gets credit for being the, a top 5 running back. I think he's very good. Do I think he's top 5? I don't know. How well will that continue? And especially their defense getting as many wins as it got. That's very surprising to me. That would be, up there with the best defenses in football. I mean, you look at the Rams, the Broncos, and the Bengals, all 3 of those, and even, the Cardinals, all 3 of those had kind of surprising good defenses. Even the Chargers, top 5 teams happen to be the top 5 coverage teams in the NFL. So kind of goes to show how important coverage is, at least in my rankings. Number 4, the Cardinals. This is no surprise. They had a great week 1, so of course they're going to be very high up. And again, Pro Football Focus only had Kyler as a tier 2 quarterback, so maybe he could jump up to that tier 1 range and get even more wins. But still, 13 wins would be pretty great. Same thing with the Chargers. A little surprising that they're this high, but they did play well. Feel like I'm a little bit surprised Herbert still got the tier 1 quarterback rating, despite the fact that he did kind of, he had that bad interception. But again, he's awesome. We all know that. The question is, can he be tier 1 quarterback for an entire season? That remains to be seen. But, even so, I think that, again, the way their coverage played is surprising because it kind of goes to show the Brandon Staley effect there, I think. Number 6, the Saints. Again, this is no surprise. Although Jameis Winston playing quarterback 2 level play is maybe a bit surprising. Kamara being a tier 1 running back is not that surprising. And even the receiving core being tier 3, kind of surprising given the talent we saw going in. That might be the Sean Payton effect a little bit there. So, and I also think their offensive line probably could get better. I think that tier 3 sort of feels like it's undervaluing it. So this might be a pretty fair rating for the Saints at 12.59 wins. The Seahawks at 7, and this is, the arguments I had with people all off season was like, listen, I get that there's some issues here with the Seahawks, but what they have is a tier 1 quarterback and tier 1 receiving core, and that really showed in that game. And their defense played well. It wasn't spectacular, but it played well against a team that, doesn't have a ton of talent, especially in the receiving category for the Colts. So still a good win. This is definitely a top-heavy team, I think. This rating backs it up, but when your top-heavy team has DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Russell Wilson, you feel pretty good about yourself. Another surprise here at number 8 with the Philadelphia Eagles. You do have to wonder a little bit how much of this is just playing the Atlanta Falcons. Will Jalen Hurts be a tier 1 quarterback this season? Probably not. He probably will fall off a little bit. The question is how much. But hey, if he can be a tier 1 quarterback, if the receiving core can be a tier 2 receiving core, which to me, those are the 2 that I'm like, I think those probably will fall down. But if you don't believe that and you think those are legit, then yeah, the Eagles would probably be a playoff team. I think to me, though, this is a small sample size, and I just want to see more before I'm willing to say the Eagles will win 12 games this season. Number 9, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, again, despite being number 9, I still have them as an 11.62 win according to this formula. So, yes, it's a little bit lower, but that's more wins than they had last year. They had 11, and also I would say 1 clear thing I'm noticing is the wide receiving core being tier 3. That's just not going to happen. I mean, this is the best wide receiving core in football. They had a bad game week 1. So, again, that's where the week 1 small sample size can come into play. I think that they're probably better than this. And, the Cleveland Browns as well, as I mentioned, they're the one team that actually performed higher in this grading system and lost the game than their opponent. They're the only team that did that. In fact, as you notice, out of these top 16 teams, 14 of them won their games. So again, I think it's a pretty good system. But why did the Browns end up, losing despite this? Well, I think there's some reasons, and one thing that I should mention as well is, they have tier 2 wide receiving play here. They also didn't have Odell, so that's kind of an area where this can be an issue. Is they could potentially need that stuff. What I mean is, if there is an injury, it doesn't factor into the grading system, but obviously, for the future, they'll have him. So that's why, again, this is not a prediction power rankings. This is simply talking about week 1 as a whole. So injuries cannot be factored into the future at all. The future itself cannot be factored in. Number 11, you have the Panthers who, again, will we have tier 3 quarterback play out of Sam Darnold for his entire season? I'm going to still bet on no, but if they can have it, this could be a playoff team. I think that they're that close. And also, I mean, again, the running game getting 0 wins here is clearly a small sample size. Christian McCaffrey, he adds the running back 1 value, I think, and that's something that is kind of maybe a bit of an issue with doing this small sample size, is just the fact that sometimes we're dealing with these guys that have 10 carries, so that's a huge issue. Like, for example, one down the list, the Miami Dolphins, they get 2.5 wins because Myles Gaskins had a good day. That's not going to continue. At least I'd be shocked if it does. Pro Football Focus, not a fan of Tua's game, so that's maybe a bit discouraging for the Dolphins. But encouraging is they did still get 10 wins, but again, 2.5 of those credited to the running back play, which will not happen. However, even if you take 2 wins off the top there, that's still 8 wins. And if Tua can then bounce back and become a tier 3 or tier 4 quarterback, that could be a playoff team. Also, slight correction, I said Sam Darnold got credit for tier 3 quarterback play. That's not true. He got credit for tier 2 quarterback play. So good on him for that game. Just don't know if it'll continue. Number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. This checks out. An 9-win team. This is kind of what they feel like. Maybe you feel as though Dak is a tier 1 quarterback. I think tier 2 is fine. That's kind of where I would have him. Maybe you feel the receiving core is tier 1. I probably would agree with that. But again, they're kind of as we expected. Really good passing attack, and that's kind of carrying their team. And listen, it'll win you some games doing that. The San Francisco 49ers being 14 is definitely low, although their running game being 0 wins is a bit surprising. And I should clarify, the running game is simply just running backs. It doesn't include run blocking. Run blocking is included in offensive line. So that's maybe why they're as low as they were, because tier 1 receiving core play, and I thought Garoppolo played maybe better than tier 3, but that's probably where he is throughout his career. They weren't overly impressed with the 49ers defense, which I guess makes some sense, but just sort of given that last couple minutes with the Lions. So maybe that's kind of what's messing up their rating so far. I expect them to be better than 8.72 wins. Number 15, we have the Patriots, the second highest loser on this list. I said earlier, I made a slight error. I said that there was, only 2 losers in the top 16. There's actually 3. It's Cowboys, Patriots, and Chiefs. Forgot about the Cowboys. Anyways, Patriots, hey, tier 3 quarterback play from a rookie. That's pretty, tier 3 quarterback play from a rookie. That's certainly pretty good. You'll take that for sure. Receiving core played fine. Offensive line is a little bit surprising that it didn't do as well as maybe you would expect, but as a whole, this is maybe a little bit lower than we expect the Patriots to be, but it's right around where we expect the Patriots to be. Maybe with Gilmore coming back, that puts the coverage at 3 wins, and that can give you maybe close to an extra win, make you close to a playoff team. That checks out to me. Number 16, the Kansas City Chiefs. They had Mahomes as a tier 3 quarterback in this one. I would like to see that data. That's surprising to me. Clearly, we know Mahomes throughout the course of a season will be tier 1. So add a little over 2 wins right there. And then their defense really, again, graded very poorly in Pro Football Focus's mind. No wins for run defense or pass rush. A little bit for coverage, but not much. That's tier 4 coverage. So Pro Football Focus not impressed with the Kansas City defense, but how much of that was just playing the Cleveland Browns. So, this is the one game where the winning team ended up lower than the losing team. However, I think, again, the Mahomes factor probably plays a role there in that flip. And then, a special teams play, and that kind of was the difference in the game. So I think that part makes sense. All right, next panel, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Steelers fans and me are just going to not get along this season. It might have to be, even though I actually think this is low. I think the Steelers will be better than 7.86 wins. Again, I do not make the, where they end up and what tier they end up. That's all PFF. Take it up with them. And the glaring issue I have here is quarterback play being tier 5 with Roethlisberger. I get it for one game, but just my point is, I think throughout the course of a season, that will vastly improve. And you'll see, I still think the Steelers are a playoff team. I said that preseason. I still believe that. And I think I could even see their receiving core playing a little better. One thing very surprised with by the Steelers was, that tier 2 coverage play. That surprised me a little bit. Also, pass rush was not tier 1. They gave him pass rush tier 2. So interesting stuff there. And, I value coverage higher because that's what the data backs up. And I make my opinion based on facts, not based on how I, just kind of feel like something might be. Number 18, the Giants. Little surprised the Giants made it this high. Little surprised they gave Daniel Jones tier 3 quarterback play. So that's just a bit surprising to me. You take that down, they're a little bit lower, which probably makes some sense. That's kind of my thing there. How about the Houston Texans coming in at 19 right here with some tier 3 quarterback play, tier 3 receiving play, tier 3 coverage. So, some solid stuff there. Offensive line played well as well. I don't think it's out of the question that the Texans could be like a 7-win team. I don't think that's crazy to think. I would probably expect that like Tyrod Taylor isn't a tier 3 quarterback throughout the course of the season. He's kind of been a consistent tier 4 to tier 5 quarterback. But, if he does take that step up, that could end up being the case. I would suspect more around 5 wins, though, for the Texans. Number 20, the Raiders. This is a bit surprising. So this is the worst a winning team did. And to me, the glaring issue here, one of them is the quarterback play being just tier 3. To me, that's clearly Derek Carr is a tier 2 quarterback. You could make the argument he's a tier 1 quarterback. So that's something that I would probably say is a little bit higher. So you give him an extra win or two there. That feels a bit more right to me. Although the rest of it does kind of check out. I do wonder was their coverage really good, or did it look better due to the Ravens' poor receiving core? We'll talk about them next. They technically had a tier 3 receiving core, although it was a low tier 3 receiving core. And one of the issues just with the Ravens in this whole chart is last year the Ravens, their win total for this was a lot lower than their total win total. And I think this chart maybe doesn't do the best job at taking into account a good rushing quarterback, which obviously is a big part of Lamar's game. So that might be just a flaw in the system, actually. That's probably the biggest flaw in the system I'm willing to take in this one. I'm not sure exactly how to change that, but you maybe add a couple of wins for the Ravens there. So and this wasn't their best game either, so I think I could see them being better, because for them, quarterback, that's literally just passing. That's not even Lamar's grade, so that's kind of just an issue. Number 22, the Vikings, who had a very disappointing game. I mean, the glaring issue for me is typically you're giving them 2.5 wins due to Dalvin Cook. Well, Dalvin Cook got him 0 wins in his first game, which doesn't really make sense, but you know what I mean. And the quarterback play, they actually said Kirk Cousins played pretty well. The receiving core was kind of fine. You want that to be a little better, and they gave no credit to their defense whatsoever, except for a little bit of points in the run defense. So defense has to be better for the Vikings, according to Pro Football Focus. And, offensive line, not great either. The Packers, obviously, they were horrible. Weirdly, their offensive line, tier 1, so good job there. Everything else, not too great. Also, a little bit of a surprise, though. They gave their coverage unit tier 2, which was definitely surprising, and that did not check out. They were actually kind of higher on the Packers' defense, which I don't know if I fully agree with. Maybe I'll go back and rewatch the tape, but again, kind of hard because no all 22. So I kind of have to take Pro Football Focus's word for some of this stuff, unfortunately. I would much rather watch it for myself. Obviously, the clear issue is, tier 5 quarterback play, tier 5 receiving play, and tier 5 halfback play. You got to get some more wins there if you're going to be a consistent playoff team, and they will. Again, one game, small sample size, not concerned about that. Kind of similar with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen was better than Aaron Rodgers. Most people were better than Aaron Rodgers week 1. He had tier 3 quarterback play. Offensive line didn't have their best day, according to Pro Football Focus. And again, no wins with the receiving core category. That's just going to be tough. Defense was fine. They didn't get as far as they got last year because of their defense. They got as far as they got last year because of their passing game, and they left a solid 5 wins just on the table there alone. So that's a big issue, but I think they'll be fine heading into next week. So I think this is, to me, both the Packers and Bills feel like sort of one-game flukes, and even a few of these other teams like the Ravens, Raiders, and Vikings, I think will all probably improve. Moving on to the Jaguars, they're a great example of exactly why you have kind of this weird issue, I guess, with the small sample size where the running game, they ran the ball 14 times, but they actually did it, according to Pro Football Focus, well enough to be a tier 1 running unit, which gives you 2.5 wins, but that's not going to sustain. So I would lump off at least 2 wins there. So now you're looking at, maybe a 3.61 team, which would be a few spots lower for sure. Again, at the same time, you could also argue maybe Lawrence will improve as a quarterback. I could see that happening. Receiving core not giving him much, and the defense not giving him much. It's not a good football team, and Trevor Lawrence is a rookie. He's going to have to grow, so at least the offensive line played decently well. That's the one saving grace. Similar to the Lions, that's their one saving grace. Tier 2 offensive line play, and even Jared Goff, tier 4. I mean, that's not horrible. Receiving core, again, tier 4. That's probably better than I expect them to do. Really what it comes down to is literally no points awarded whatsoever for their defense. So that's where they screwed up. We have a couple of teams at 27 and 28 that I expect to bounce back from bad week 1 performances. First, the Colts, who, Wentz wasn't horrible. He wasn't spectacular, according to PFF. The receiving core, it's just an issue. And then no wins added with the running game. Those are kind of some issues right off the bat. But to me, the bigger surprise was their defense. Their defense just, graded horribly. And I suspect that will improve, but it was just an ugly game for the Colts week 1. So I expect stuff to improve here. But for week 1, it does kind of make sense that they were nearly a bottom 5 team because of how they played. Same thing with the Titans. Like, this makes sense that they're this low, even though I do expect stuff to improve. Like, I don't think their offensive line is going to be tier 5 for the entire season. I don't think Tannehill is going to be just tier 4 for the entire season. I don't think their receiving core is going to be just tier 4 for the entire season. And I certainly would expect that Derrick Henry would come back to being a tier 1 running back. So you do all of that. I mean, that's what, 8 or 9 wins right there if they can just return to form. So their defense is horrible. They're not a defensive team. That's not surprising to me. The offense was the issue, and it does make you wonder, like, are there some issues? Does Arthur Smith come into play here? But in a 1-game sample size, I'm not willing to freak out too much over them. 29, the Atlanta Falcons. Again, this checks out. They did not have a great game. Bad offensive line. That Mayfield guy, the guard, ended up with a passer, Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade of 1.4. It goes up to 100. It's a scale of 1 to 100. He had a 1.4. Never seen that before. Not a lot else that they're adding here. A little bit on defense, but not much. It was a bad performance. And you want to see, Matt Ryan was at least a tier 4 quarterback. You'd like to see him be better, though, but kind of hard to be better. Like, the real issue, I think, was receiving core. People gave me some criticism for saying this is tier 3 receiving core. It played tier 5 week 1. That's got to improve, and it probably will. Another real surprise was the Washington football team, which are the balls on the chart, them being the 3rd worst team in football week 1. That didn't feel right to me. I'm a little surprised. I mean, tier 5 quarterback play, I guess I get that. I thought their receiving core was a little bit better than tier 4. No points in the running game, I get that. I'm just really shocked that their defense got graded so poorly. And maybe that's just a Pro Football Focus thing, I don't know. But them getting no points for their pass rush is surprising. Them getting very little with their coverage is surprising. And them getting very little with run defense is surprising. So all of that stuff, very surprising. Maybe the Chargers made them look worse, I don't know. But I'm willing to say that that might be a grading thing. That might be on Pro Football Focus's end. I think they're better, definitely better than third worst team in football. Number 32, the Chicago Bears. So tier 5 offensive line. Andy Dalton actually did get him a win at the quarterback position, and they had a little bit with the wide receiving game and with the running backs. But other than that, their defense it wasn't good across the board. I mean, they had this great defensive line. They were given tier 5 grades, so that's shocking to me. Only 3 wins for the Chicago Bears. And then for the Jets, I mean, this is just, it's exactly the Jets. I mean, Zach Wilson would get them 1 win if they play this way for all 17 games. And then there's the 0.42 wins that I just gave to everybody. That's literally all they got. Everything else tier 5. It was a complete mess. Just a horrible day for the Jets. So yeah, I certainly didn't expect this video to go this long, but I think it's kind of a fun way to, talk about this stuff. And so I definitely had fun with it. I think that around week 7 or 8, we'll start to get much more accurate results. I think that we're just going to get some variance weeks 1 and 2, maybe even up to week 4 or 5. But I think once we get, my guess would be around 6 or 7, then most of it will kind of check out and will be accurate. But maybe not, who knows? And again, I think this could be a good way to learn more about how we view football. That's kind of the main thing I've been trying to do this offseason, and I do feel like I've done a pretty good job of it. A great example, if you're still not convinced, which I have to imagine if you're this far into one of my videos, you at least believe that there's something interesting here. A great example of kind of how I view football is Lamar Jackson with the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Everyone kept saying, man, this offensive line, it's just doing so horrible. I mean, the Raiders pass rush all night long, just completely dominating. But there were only 4 pressures that happened 2.5 seconds into the play. So I think that's a great example of, because, Lott wasn't open. Lamar was then trying to scramble. That's how more sacks and more pressures came. And that's not how it feels when you watch the game, but I think that's a great example of showing how maybe our emotions think one thing and our brain thinks one thing when we're watching that's not actually happening. Because, people keep saying, because I said pass rush is overrated, at least having good pass rushers is overrated, is the better way to phrase it. And people kept saying, well, this team literally won because they had good pass rushers. But my argument is that, did they actually win because they had good pass rushers, or is that just how you felt when you watched the game? I think that's kind of a good way to phrase it. But yeah, anyways, this is fun. Again, I'm sure there's going to be some commenter saying, you think the Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl? You're an idiot. That's not what I'm saying. But, it's fun, and I really enjoy doing this, and I know some of you guys do as well, so that's why I still make these videos, even though get some angry commenters. Who cares? Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.